What is up, everybody? Kyle Lindemann, aka Luck is Made here, coming at you with a video. We're going to talk about some 5 quarterback breakouts today. Now, these are going to be quarterbacks that aren't going in the early part of your drafts. Definitely not the first 5 quarterbacks off the board because, let's be honest, that's easy. So if you don't go with an early quarterback, who are some quarterbacks you can target who have league-winning upside? First one, Trevor Lawrence. He's going around the quarterback 8. ADP is about 64.9. This is for one quarterback, obviously. He was basically the most highly touted prospect to hit the NFL since Andrew Luck. He had the Urban Meyer debacle where he didn't do so well his rookie year. I think we all know that. Last year, Lawrence threw for 4,113 yards, 25 passing touchdowns to just 8 interceptions. He's definitely got room to grow as a passer. He also added 291 yards on the ground, which definitely is a boost to his fantasy ceiling. Jaguars recently re-signed Evan Ingram, who's a very athletic tight end. The Jaguars traded for wide receiver Calvin Ridley, who definitely can profile as a wide receiver 1. They've got Christian Kirk. They've got Zay Jones. They just have an abundance of riches. They got Travis Etienne. They drafted Tank Bigsby. This offense is loaded. This offense is loaded, I'm telling you. Lawrence, he's definitely got room to grow. He's got such a high ceiling. He started slow in 4 of his first 5 games last year, but ended up with 7 top 8 finishes on the season. Like I mentioned, he's got a decent enough rushing floor. He's getting about 3.5 fantasy points a game on the ground with his legs. We definitely want to have some rushing from our quarterbacks in order to, have that top ceiling. I really like Lawrence, and it feels like there's a drop-off after him for sure. Number 2, Tua Tagovailoa, quarterback of the Miami Dolphins. He's going right around the quarterback 10 off the board, ADP 92.7. He had 2 disappointing seasons to start his career, but he showed who he was last year, took a massive leap forward. He's throwing to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and pretty much impossible to be bad when you're throwing to both of those guys for fantasy. Mike McDaniel, obviously offensive wizard. Tua was 259 of 400, 3,500 yards, 25 TDs, 8 interceptions, just 13 games. He did have a couple of concussions. His season was ended early. Obviously, we had that game against the Bengals where he hit his head on the turf, and that was just an ugly scene. From what medical research I've done, I'm not a medical expert, but he's been, learning jiu-jitsu in the offseason. Sounds like he is not at any more risk to get a concussion than any other player. So how true is this? I'm not a doctor, but the Miami Dolphins feel good about him starting this year. He's an affordable quarterback, and, if you don't get one of the early guys, I just love Tua. He basically led the NFL in yards per attempt last year. He had a very good completion percentage. He's still got room to grow as a passer. He's not going to give you a ton on the ground, but wouldn't shock me if he threw for 4,500 yards this year. Coming in at quarterback 3, Daniel Jones. He's going around the quarterback 15, ADP 116.3. He was definitely one of the best values of last year. Everybody pretty much wrote this guy off like, he's a bust. I don't want him. In steps Brian Dable. There was a lot to like with the Giants offense last year. The Giants have like 25 million slot receivers, but the good news is they did bring in Darren Waller, who's a little bit older, but still, flashes some elite athleticism. So hard not to think that Jones and Waller could be a nice tandem this year. Jones threw for 3,200 yards and 15 touchdowns last year. Where he was most effective was on the ground. He rushed for 708 yards, 7 touchdowns. Like I mentioned, they added Waller. Still feels like Jones has got a ceiling to reach. Saquon Barkley is back, and we don't really know who their wide receiver 1 is going to be, but pretty clear the Giants extended Jones at least for the next 2 years, so they want to see him succeed. Still feels like he's got room to grow as a passer, so I really like Daniel Jones, especially if you miss, the early quarterback window and, quarterbacks maybe went higher and you were able to gobble up maybe an elite tight end, couple of running backs, couple of receivers. Your team's looking good. You got your flex filled. Boom. Come back with Daniel Jones. I think you're going to like what you see. Coming in, number 4 is Brock Purdy from the San Francisco 49ers. He's going around the quarterback 23 right now, ADP 167. Now, he's someone who's really risen up the draft boards, probably maybe even risen up a little bit more. 49ers traded Trey Lance. Pretty clear Brock's going to be the guy. Sam Darnold does loom in the background, but as long as Purdy's healthy and playing well, he's going to be the guy this year. So pretty clear that Kyle Shanahan likes him. Now, this may not be the best for one quarterback leagues. I think Purdy's probably gonna have more value in like a 14-team league, maybe a little thinner. But for super flex, if you want a quarterback 2 who's rock solid, who's got plenty of upside, that can win you that super flex spot every week, Purdy's a great value. He's not going to have the same rushing upside as Trey Lance, but let's be honest, he's got Trent Williams, blocking his blind side. He's got Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel. Kyle Shanahan calling plays. I mean, that 49ers offense is just so high powered, just going to be hard to stop. And, you know, Purdy had some pretty solid top 12 quarterback finishes last year. He had a couple where he was in the 13 to 15 range. Like I said, I'm not going to pretend that he's a guy that's going to give you top 5 upside, but deeper formats, especially super flex, I really like Purdy this year. And last but not least, we are talking about Sam Howe from the Washington Commanders, going as the quarterback 26. He's got a 194.0 ADP. Now, pretty clear he's going to be the starter this year. Now, he went in the first pick of the 5th round in the 2022 NFL draft. He definitely fell further in the draft than he should have, which is unfortunate. But Washington wants him to be the guy. They did sign Jacoby Brissett, who's, you know, more than adequate. So Howe's not necessarily going to have the longest leash. He needs to step in and show what he can do this year, but no reason to think that he can't. And he's got some sneaky athleticism. His junior year at North Carolina, before he went pro, he rushed for 828 yards, 11 touchdowns. You know, he had Javonte Williams, Michael Carter. I believe he had Daz Newsome, De'Ami Brown. I mean, now that may not sound the greatest, but like Sam Howell had all those guys. All those guys went pro. His junior year at North Carolina wasn't as good. He ran a lot more to pick up plays with his legs. Eric Bieniemy, the new Commanders offensive coordinator. We've got Terry McLaurin. We've got Jahan Dotson. We've got Antonio Gibson, who's a heck of a receiver. Brian Robinson. They did make some improvements on the offensive line. I'm not saying that Washington's offense is going to be amazing by any stretch, but it's more than adequate. And, you know, if you feel like Sam Howell's got some upside, we definitely want to be, you know, keeping an eye on these guys because, you know, if you're looking at a year 4, year 5, year 6 quarterback, pretty much by that time in a quarterback's career, like guys are who they are. So we want to be targeting some of these year 2, year 3 guys who haven't necessarily broken out, haven't done anything yet. The market's kind of fading because they're not really sure. Like that's where the advantage is and the opportunity is to find these high upside quarterbacks. Great situation for Sam Howell. So, you know, not saying it's going to be easy, but he's definitely got a ton of upside. So those are your 5 quarterbacks. Like I said, if you miss out on one of the early ones, you want to target somebody a little bit later who's got a ton of potential. Those are your 5 to target. Kyle Lindemann, aka Luck is Made. I'm out, and we'll see you in the next video.